Hi there, my name is Dale Wood and I am the Style and Market Editor at Veranda. I'm delighted to be here with you all. We have a great conversation planned about the future of sustainable textiles today. But before we dive in, I first want to thank ADAC for bringing us all together today and for this great opportunity to get everybody together. I'd also like to take a minute to thank our sponsors. We have Krypton and Kravet. For 28 years, Krypton has been leading the way in performance fabrics that are as elevated and beautiful in design as they are practical in application. As an editor and an especially textile obsessed editor, what excites me about Krypton is that they're constantly innovating and pushing the world of fabrics forward. Before we get started though, I'm going to share this brief message from them, which I hope you all will enjoy. So last fall, I had this idea for a story that ended up running in Veranda's March-April issue. And it all began by essentially asking the question, can sustainable design and specifically sustainable fabrics be chic? This story and looking at sustainable textiles was pretty much uncharted territory for us, and especially for me. Before this, I'd never really considered things like where a linen or a viscose fabric comes from, or what sort of footprint I was probably leaving by overnighting memo samples from France, for instance. Needless to say, in attempting to answer these questions and by delving further into the topic, my eyes were opened wide. In reading about the millions of tons of textile waste heading to the landfill each year, among many other shocking statistics, I began to realize that it is time to reevaluate our approach to using fabrics at home. But how do you responsibly source textiles and other materials that have a lower impact on our environment? Even though buzzwords like sustainable and eco-friendly are totally mainstream now, I've always thought that green things have gotten a rather bad rap. Sometimes, I mean, you think sustainable fabrics and sometimes plastic-like stiff materials come to mind, things perhaps better suited for the doctor's office or a waiting room over your living room. Not exactly what you want to live with today, that's for sure. But has that changed? So to weigh in on this and so much more, I'm happy to have three masters of design with me today, not to mention experts on sustainable design. I have to say that each time I talk to them, I learn a little bit more about what it means to be sustainable today and how green design is better looking than ever. I'm excited to introduce them to you all. So first up, we have Tom Felicia, one of America's most beloved interior designers and one who believes that good design should be approachable for everyone. What I love most about Tom's work is his sophisticated use of textures and layers. His rooms exude atmosphere and are ones that you just want to be in. Through his brand, Sedgwick and Brattle, he's also a talented and prolific product designer, and I always so love seeing what he's up to at High Point and other markets. He has had longtime collaborations with companies such as Vanguard, Kravet, and Eastern Accents, among others. Welcome, Tom. So happy to have you here today.
So happy to be here, Dale.
How are you?
Yeah, super excited. This is going to be fun.
It will be fun. So then next up, we have the fabulous Young He. Young is known for her ability to effortlessly blend styles and eras in interiors, as well as her refined and expert eye. Over the years, she's dreamed up some incredibly show-stopping rooms. One particular favorite of mine that's always on my mood board was her tour de force artist studio, which was at the Kips Bay Decorator Show House in 2019. More recently, Young has also completed the interiors at the Point Grace Resort in the Turks and Caicos. And I encourage everyone to check it out and book a trip immediately. I know we're all long overdue for a vacation, and trust me, yes. Welcome, Young. Nice to
Hey
see
everyone.
you. Hi.
So nice to be a part of this.
Thanks for being here. And finally, we have Corey Damon Jenkins. Corey creates rooms that are full of personality, ones that speak to his love of classic design, but just maybe turning it all a bit on its head. What most draws me to his work is that he's not afraid to embrace the pretty and a little bit of whimsy, something we're always here for at Veranda. Corey is a newly published author. His first book, it's a big one, Design Remix, a new spin on traditional rooms, is one of my favorites that came out this season. And just recently, actually, just on Tuesday of this week, Corey was honored at the New York School of Interior Design's annual gala and was awarded the Larry Kravitz Design Industry Leadership Award. Congratulations, Corey, and welcome.
Hey, Dale.
You.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to have you all here. I mean, as I said, we have talked about this topic before, and I learned so much from you, and I'm excited to keep learning, because this is one of those topics that I think you can never know too much about. And I think as you know, the world moves on, it's just becoming more important and something that we all really need to be thinking about and taking seriously, living sustainably. So without further ado, I wanted it to just be the four of us so we can get like up close and personal. I do want to quickly mention that we will have a Q&A at the end. So I would love to invite everyone joining us to please submit some questions or anything that comes up as we go through our discussion. There's that little chat feature at the bottom of Zoom that you can use to do that. And hopefully we'll have some time at the end to cover some of those questions. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask you guys is, I want to talk about when it first hit you that we have to start taking sustainable design seriously. Did you have a light bulb moment or an aha moment? Like maybe it was one specific time, maybe it's something you've been thinking about for a long time. I want to know what was your moment. So Young, let's start with you.
For me, was really seeing how much waste our projects produce. It's like we have entire kitchens that are often perfectly good, entire vanities, stone, all these things that we've taken from the earth that now are just going to go into garbage. And now that we are really dealing with and confronting global warming, the pollution in our oceans, it's really given me pause, how much waste our industry produces. I think, one thing that's really changed for me is this notion. Before I was like, yeah, sure, we can redecorate every 3 years. But, I really want to encourage people to add on as their budget allows, but not to consider redoing things, because that really does create a lot of waste.
Mm-hmm. It really does. Yeah. And what about you, Corey? Have you always been eco-minded, or was there one kind of moment that made you rethink some things?
I was not always ego-minded. I will keep it crazy real. I wasn't.
Litter bug.
Yeah, really.
So I wouldn't say so much that. It's just that I think that I had a client that really was deeply interested in the environment, and he is basically a nerd. He's in the science and all of that. And when we were shopping for his project, and this was several years ago, he said, well, what can we do to really cut down on the planet's, waste problem? And I said, you know what, I haven't really thought about that. That's a really good question. And so we did some research. And at the time, again, this is several years ago, the fabrics that were more sustainable were not quite as attractive. I think in terms of what I wanted to use for it in a residential interior design project, but his enthusiasm for it really inspired me, and it made me become more sensitive and more aware of what's going on. And I think that, as interior designers, our responsibility is to keep a finger on the pulse of not only what's happening in our industry, but also with our clientele. And sometimes our clientele in our showrooms, they can influence us just as much as we influence them. So once he made that very clear that he and his wife wanted to be really responsible with their spending, it behooved me to begin doing more research. And now we've made it part of our firm's general practice as far as, trying to source there first and then moving out from there.
I love that
That's
you're
great.
you were challenged by your client, and
That's cool.
a good way. Tom, we're coming to you next.
Well, so mine's a few different sort of situations, and going back to what Young was talking about, which I think is so on point. I was in a situation where we were doing just that, where it was a house that was, not in the style of my client, but was perfectly livable, nice, kitchens and bathrooms and all of that. So we found a company that we could donate to that actually repurposes and reuses all of those things, and that they have, and then my client was able to then choose to either get paid for it or takes a tax incentive. So I think that was a big eye opener for me, and I was like, wow, this is a great business. It's cool. I think it's interesting that someone's doing this, but also it's a wonderful thing for us as design professionals to have access to that, because they even demo everything and take it out, so you don't even have to pay for the demo. So that was one first thing. Then when I started working in the space of furniture design, right around that same time, I had two projects. So I was starting to develop furniture and working with Vanguard, and then I got involved with the Sustainable Furnishings Council, and also seeing what Vanguard was doing with their recycling program and using recycled metals for the sofas and certified woods and organic foams and all of that. So I was learning all about that, and then getting involved with the Sustainable Furniture Council because of their involvement, and then ended up sort of becoming a bigger part of that sort of thing. And then at that same time, I was invited to be to design a model unit for a developer in New York City that was doing the first LEED Platinum certified building. And this was like, 10 years ago. And it was like, it was kind of like, wow, this is really cool. And that just in terms of water collection and the materials and the way that they built the building and all of the electrical and the lighting and all of that all met they were like platinum LEED certified. And so I did the interior for the sort of their model apartment. And actually some of the images will be part of what we're going to be seeing today. But it was really cool because we worked with all different local people. The rug was made out of a vintage clean rug that was falling apart, and then I made with a felt that was made in Connecticut, and I had it put together in New York and stitched together, and so it was all local. And then I made lighting out of all these sort of vintage lighting pieces. It was just so everything had a sustainable, recycled, kind of green component to it. And at that time, I sort of created this philosophy when I would start talking about, green with the Sustainable Furniture Council, was really about shades of green and sort of giving people the understanding that like every little step counts, every little, like whether it's just your light bulbs or your cleaning supplies or your detergents or just, maybe choosing some of the fabrics and things that you live on that are organic, or an organic mattress. They're all these things, every little step adds up. And so it just becomes a conversation.
For a second? So I want to talk about this because I'm thinking this is a brilliant philosophy and very interesting. So you're saying shades of green is like a spectrum. Is that right?
Yes,
so
100%.
Is it possible to be 100% green? Do you need to be 100% green?
I mean, I think the goal is to be as green as you can be. And I also think the goal is to really introduce people to the idea of being thoughtful about what they surround themselves with in a way that's digestible, and that they feel like that, sometimes people even just get involved because they want to teach their kids, and so, like think of back when they were telling people like, don't be a litter bug. We were joking about that earlier, right? But the thing is that it just started out, there was a generation of people that threw things out of the window of their car. And then there was a litter bug, thing on like commercials when little kids were watching cartoons on Saturdays. And then it became a thing, like, don't be a litter bug. It was like cool not to be a litter bug, and like to make a basket with your garbage in the garbage can. And then all of a sudden now those people have children, and it just, no one throws stuff out of their windows anymore. Really, very few people do. It's bizarre when you see it. But, and it used to be highways full of garbage. So it just takes one little action like that. It's like teaching kids to recycle at home is just responsible and interesting and fun for them to do. It's a good learning experience. It just changes a generation. Like thinking about light bulbs, thinking about, oh my God, looking at, you have different detergents now in your house. You can be like, hey, like when I go and buy things, and I'm just like, there's like 4 options that are environmentally friendly. And it's like, you know, so it's like, it's not really, you start with these little baby steps, you know, it's like recycled garbage bags or biodegradable garbage bags, things like that. All of a sudden, you won't realize, but like within 1 year, you could have switched to like so many different things that you're living with that are just thoughtful. And I think that's a shade of green. Like you may not be the greenest person on your block, but you're a shade of green. And it's like, and your goal is hopefully we as professionals, design professionals, hopefully bring some of the knowledge about textiles and various things that people bring into their home in terms of finishes and all of those kinds of things, or the paints, or sometimes the glues that we use for wallpaper, and all of those kinds of things that off gas and they talk about off gassing, because the minute people think about it, they're like, oh yeah, you know, like when you smell a car that's like, ooh, that new car smell, that's off gassing. That generally is toxic chemicals. You know, we love the smell, but it's not good for you. So if you walk into a house and it smells like a new car, get out.
Yeah.
Open the windows.
That's amazing. I do want to do a little bit of myth busting here before we get any further. So as I mentioned before, I think many of us used to think sustainable and imagine sterile, uninviting spaces, or that being green meant sacrificing style.
Yeah.
I'll give this one to you. What do you think? Do you think it's possible to create warm and inviting interiors today using products that are more environmentally thoughtful? And is that something that you're doing more and more?
Who's
Was
this?
that Corey or
Sorry.
To me?
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think actually that's a complete myth. You know, what's actually really green and really sustainable are antiques, really well-made traditional fabrics. You know, consider Tibetan Persian rugs that were dyed with vegetable dyes. They have extremely high lanolin content because those sheep are at such high altitudes. They're naturally stain resistant. They're naturally work with the environment. Antiques, they lasted 100 years, are going to survive your children. Bunny Williams used to always say that.
Not all children. I was a nightmare.
True.
I can see.
But the funny thing is, like, for instance, you know, one of the things that I used to get a lot of times is people would say, oh, I can't use nice linen. I can't use mohair. I can't use these nice fabrics because I have children. And, you know, I can tell you from experience, you know, that those are probably the most resistant to children. My son wrote in ballpoint pen on my mohair sofa, and I was able to erase it out.
Young. You know what I always say to people when we talk about mohair? I'm like, the reason they used to use it in opera houses and movie theaters was that it pretty much, you could get gum out of it. Like you could it was probably one of the most durable, elegant fabrics that really exist or existed.
Correct.
And so that's why it was found in those kind of environments. So anyways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So really consider, you know, I have linens from Rogers and Goffagon that lasted 15 years and are still going. So, you know, you can invest in those fabrics. And of course, like Krypton, what's great about that is, you know, we have to consider what's toxic to the environment, but also what's toxic to ourselves. It's nice that Krypton Fabrics doesn't create those off gases or leaves these chemicals that our bodies can absorb. So that's why it's, you know, gold certified green. So absolutely, you can have the finest, most beautiful things and still be very green.
I think the antique is so interesting too when you think about it, and that's such a way to make a highly personal and inviting space, I think, and that's What a great way. So is it hard to get people on board with a sustainable scheme, like your clients? Like, do you have to sell it? Is it a hard sell, or are people more interested now coming to you? It kind of sounds like Corey, like that one client came to you with it, but is that becoming more mainstream, would you say? And if not, how do you convince them that this is what they should be doing?
Absolutely. So I believe that as designers and decorators, they call us tastemakers, right? So that means that we are the governors of what is considered fine taste or good taste. So I find that with clients and contractors, builders, if we as the tastemakers say that this sustainable solution is in good taste, it's amazing how, using these little Jedi mind tricks, we can influence people to take us seriously and to really embrace these new technologies and these new materials. So it's not that difficult. I think that the challenge now has been, as you mentioned, getting people in mass on board with it. I think that our country and really abroad, people are much more environmentally responsible, or at least are thinking about it more than they were, say, 10 years ago. I think that the fabrics, such as in Krypton's case and others, have really evolved in the last several years as far as style and taste. So it makes it easier for us to sell the project, to sell the concept, when we have the tools and the materials necessary to make it beautiful, to make it cost effective, to make it environmentally a sustainable choice. And as long as we come with all of those boxes checked, it can be an easy sell for clients to get on board with it.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you're excited about it, it's infectious, right? Like it's easy to get up.
We have to take the lead with it. And I think that people follow only because they realize that we're supposed to have our finger on the pulse of what is environmentally sustainable. And if we are doing our research, we can sell that concept much easier.
Yeah. And what about for other designers out there who haven't really considered being green before? Like what's a good way to start? Like where do you begin with embracing a greener approach to things as a designer? Like what's a good entry point? Are you looking at fabrics? Are you looking at antiques?
Well, you want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, I love what Young said about inclusion of antiques. I think about antique furniture. I think about vintage lighting. These great sites that we have out there now, First Dibs, Cherish, there's so many great resources online, the local antique stores. So yes, you want to support our mainstream lighting manufacturers that are producing new lighting, but there's so much great vintage product on sale that people are trying to get rid of. And when you purchase something that's vintage or antique, it brings a certain level of class and panache and style to the project. There's nothing to talk about if everything is brand new. So what I try to do with my clients is tell them, listen, let's get this, 1920s, chandelier or this, mid-century style piece and put it in the room, because everything else in here is going to be, reproductions. But let's put a little flair, a little something off the beaten path that gives you a conversation piece to discuss with your friends and family when they come over. Now, we are basically, again, using those Jedi mind tricks. We're influencing them to spend their monies wisely, but we're also encouraging them to make an environmentally responsible choice. So it's all in how you package it. And when it comes to fabrics, again, with Krypton, for example, maybe you upholster the entire sofa in a solid Krypton, I almost call it a solid Kryptonian fabric, but a solid Krypton fabric. Sorry, Superman. But maybe you upholster the entire sofa or the antique chair in a solid fabric, and then maybe you splash the pillow or the accent pillow, for example, in a fabric that maybe is not, sustainable fabric. Fine, but it's all about choices and placement.
Or a vintage fabric. That would be a great opportunity to use a vintage textile, or take a rug that's falling apart and that's too old and do something cool with it. But yes, I think that's really smart.
Well, going back to your shades of green, it's like, just start with something small and then it'll be like a gateway drug. You'll just
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. But, I also think a lot of it is also just starting the dialogue. It's just, creating that opportunity to, let's repurpose this piece that's yours that we love, but let's just refinish it and we can do, look, there's so many great water-based finishes now and so many easy things you can do to update, keeping vintage or antique pieces and just giving them a new lease on life with just paint, low VOC paint or a great new finish that's, a water-based finish. But those are great ways to keep existing pieces or to buy vintage or antique pieces and just do these kind of simple, fun things to them so that they feel a little updated and fresh. That's a great way to do that. Also, I think, using, working with companies that are part of, that are companies that are responsible at whatever level that they can be, depending on what they're doing. I mean, there's I know that Fazy Rugs they have rugs that are recycled, they have rugs that are all natural, they have rugs that are, and then they have rugs that are, made in ways that maybe don't fit that scope, but fit another need for like hotels and things like that, where they need to be a more, it's amazing to me some of the things that we've inherited due to like, there was a lot of the mattresses that have things in them that we don't really want to have in mattresses were put in them because there were so many fires that were created by mattresses being flammable. So they had to sort of, in the 70s, they were like, do we deal with house fires and hotel fires, or do we, add these chemicals? So today, now with technology, there's so many new ways to make things flame retardant or to make them stain resistant. As you know, with Krypton, there's ways to do that and things that they understand about fabrics and how to sort of mix and weave them and things to use and understanding what natural sort of oils or different things that are found in fabrics that they can actually produce, they can actually infuse or put on the fabrics that are not unhealthy for humans or animals or so it's just it's kind of a new space. I mean, I think we live in a time where we're seeing and we're experiencing this just right now with going through all the vaccinations that everyone's going through. It's just like things are happening that we understand things in a different way, and we can actually start to hopefully affect whether it's the health of the people around us, or working with textiles and rugs and all of these different things to make them antimicrobial, to make them stain resistant, to just make them healthier and safer for us to be able to fasting when they have to make color sort of stay on material, whether it's our jeans or it's your sofa fabric. There's something that used to be a chemical that would do that, and today I think they're finding that there's natural ways to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's what's exciting about this moment. And I think whether we're talking to people in fashion about the clothes that we bring close to our body, or we're talking to interior designers and architects about what we bring into our home, in the materials, the woods that we use on our floors, we're working with woods that are harvested, that are properly and that are sustainable, and bringing in different materials, understanding, are the stones that we're bringing into our house, are those is that being done properly? Where are they coming from? Bringing things from doing a house in upstate New York and bringing stone from Italy. It seems like I try to find things regionally before I look beyond, just because I really love when places have a sense of place, so I like the idea that there's a connection to the region. And
thinking about being local too, that's such a big conversation.
And I love being local, but I also just love the idea of, I'm not a big fan of the log cabin on Park Avenue, and I'm not looking to have Park Avenue at the lake. You know what I mean? So it's like, I like when things make sense where they are. And I think that there's so many incredible resources that are regional that should be the first thing that we're looking at. And repurposing, whether it's an old house, trying to save old architecture, work with it, make it, reinvent it, so I think it's really a philosophy. I think it's a way to approach, like, whether we're looking at the food we eat, to the interiors, to the architecture, to the materials that we surround ourselves with. It's really a great opportunity to just kind of, it's really a moment where there's just so many interesting things that we can find close to where we are, and that really help tell that story. And sometimes the things that we find that we want to bring in that are exotic may already exist. I mean, maybe you bring in that Italian marble in a coffee table that's vintage, as opposed to doing that as the entrance hall floor, and do something with, with a regional stone, like a soapstone or a slate or something that, or granite that's beautiful. That's not, your typical, what you think of when you think of those materials. So I think there's, designers, I agree with Corey that we are considered to be these people that people sort of follow for advice and ideas, which I think is great. But I also think that is a great opportunity for us to start the dialogue and just say hey, let's think, I have an idea. What if we use stone for your countertops that's kind of from the area, or a state away, not on the other side of the planet. So I think that's kind of I think it's a great story point. And I mean, going back to even what Corey was talking about, having interesting stories about the process, where are these things from? Why did you choose them? That's a great story, even for something that's recently found. That is just who knew that there was a great quarry 30 miles away from your house that's making this beautiful, that's finding and harvesting these beautiful stones. And then this is what it could look like, and putting brass, instead of grout with it. And all of a sudden there's this regional material that looks like, something you've never seen before, and it's fabulous. Mm-hmm. So I think that's cool.
Client to go see it, and you tell the story of where this comes from.
Yeah.
This helps.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I do want to focus in on textiles and fabrics specifically at the moment. So when I started doing the story, I was to be honest, completely overwhelmed with knowing what to look for, knowing how to shop. I mean, you could look at fabrics that have recycled materials in them. You could look at natural fibers. You could, fabrics that are really good with durability and the long lasting kind of effects and things like that. So Tom, what are your green priorities when you're looking for fabrics? I guess it probably depends on what your project is.
No, I will tell you. So, when we're looking at the content, obviously we want to know kind of what's in it and what's on it and where it's made. Those are the things that we're looking at. We're looking at that for durability. We're looking at for sustainability. We're looking at for longevity. We're looking at it and for its beauty, and for what it looks like. I mean, today, to find what is considered all natural or organic or recycled, or there's just so many beautiful things that they're doing with recycled polyesters, recycled water bottles, plastic infused into recycled materials, recycled cottons mixed with recycled plastic woven together. It's amazing. And in wools, sustainable harvested, responsibly harvested wools. And again, Young was talking about, things at different altitudes have different, properties within them, so it's just knowing where these things are coming from, and also understanding, Krypton. One of the things that I always show a product, every market at High Point, with a Krypton fabric on it, because they're always introducing these really beautiful fabrics that we're we love this fabric. The price point's amazing and it's durable. And so it's a great story point for us, because when we're talking about why we chose it, it kind of checks every box for us. It's it's beautiful, it's elegant, it's comfortable, it's sustainable, and it's using recycled elements, and it's durable. And so, and I think Young pointed this out earlier with using things that are antique or vintage, but also things that can stand the test of time, that not only from an aesthetic standpoint, but also just from their durability and the fact that they are, they're able to be around for years, not just a couple of months.
What about you, Young? What do you look for when you're shopping for fabrics?
So I think there are lots of elements to fabrics that make it sustainable. There's the element of something that's been recycled, which is great. Recycling means it's a good thing. I love that Krypton is recycling cotton. That's something that always worries me. Every time I go to the workroom, there's so much waste. And also if we can, it's better to use natural fibers. But having said that, now that we really have created these synthetics that feel amazing, very luxurious. There are velvets that feel like regular cotton velvets. So you can have that luxury in recycled materials. Then there's the longevity issue, which is anything that lasts a really long time is going to be green. You don't have to reupholster. You don't have to throw that fabric away. We really try to encourage clients not to upholster with something that's going to be so flimsy. It's inexpensive at first, but you're going to be reupholstering soon.
Yeah. Well, Young, one of the things I wanted to point out that I think is interesting for people to know about is that all of these recycled cottons and these recycled polyesters and these recycled, a lot of that is coming from companies like upholsterers or furniture manufacturers or these rug companies that are able to, when they are reupholstering something, they're taking fabric off, or if it's new upholstery and they're cutting and they have waste, they're taking that waste and they're putting it into recycled categories. And those things are then going into a recycled, they're weighed. I think they even are able to get not a ton of money, but they get paid to recycle these things. And these things then go to these recycling places that becomes the recycled material. So there's even an incentive at some level for things, now that people are starting to have these options of when you go to an upholsterer and you see that waste, hopefully what we're seeing is that waste going into recycled categories at even local small upholstery places, not just the big companies anymore. So hopefully that's something that I see it, not every day, but a lot more than I used to, and hopefully it'll continue to be. But I just wanted to point that out because I think it's interesting for people to know that that's happening, in the fashion world, in the interiors world, more and more every year.
Yeah. So I think like recycled material is really important with fabrics, but also just cherishing really wonderful fabrics, preserving it, taking care of it. I just bought an antique bed for my daughter, and I asked her, do you want to reupholster this? And she said, why would we do that? This is beautiful. It happens to be this old Pierre Frey, and she loved it. I think there's just, I think with younger people, they really have this sense of cherishing what's old. They're very concerned about the environment, about the earth. And, it's a lovely thing. I'm just so happy that she chose that. Yeah.
That's cool.
You raised her well. So
thank you.
What about you, Corey? Are you excited by what's out there, what you're seeing in the sustainable textiles world and beyond? It seems like, from my perspective, there's so much more than there ever was before to consider. So where do you start?
I'm very excited by it. I think that it's come a long way. I think it reflects the mentality that people at large now have towards it. Is no longer considered just for the nerds or the scientists or the people who are really, pro-earth. I think people will have a greater sensitivity to what our species needs to survive. I think people are understanding that we are taking this planet for granted in many ways. And as Young was mentioning, life is so precious. It's also very brief. And so the choices that we make in the 70, 80, 90, 100 years that we're on this planet can affect the generations to follow in the short term. So I'm loving all the stuff that Krypton and other companies are putting out there, because they're recognizing the value of giving us as tastemakers and decorators a range of choices, a range of colors, a range of patterns, things that we can get creative with and still meet that environmentally sustainable mantra, that mandate that we need to pass on to our clientele.
So I have this, maybe it's a misconception that being sustainable is also oftentimes more expensive. Is that true, do you think? Or maybe I'm wrong in thinking that. Does it have to? Go ahead, Jan.
I don't think it is. I mean, I think certainly Krypton fabric is at a really great price point. I mean, I'm amazed by what they can produce at the price points that they produce it at. It's just, it lasts forever. It's nice. It's durable. So I think you can completely be budget friendly and sustainable. And as Corey said, you know, reuse, recycle, buy things that are vintage. I was so proud of my client who just bought this ginormous home. It came fully furnished. She sold everything on Facebook Marketplace. There is someone who wants, you know, a broken deer lamp out there and is willing to take it, you know?
If you can find me a pair, I'll take them.
I'll ship you some. We have like,
lodge, you mean your cabin?
Yeah, we'll send you some because there's like a bunch of them. But you know, it's a great thing to, you know, forage. All of us as designers love going to flea markets, and now you have Facebook Marketplace. I mean, just check it out.
Yeah.
You know? That
was one of my questions for you too, was how, when something is at the end of its life, when it's just beyond being salvaged, you know, that happens, let's admit it, but what do you do? So you talk about donating or selling things. Are there like take back programs or things that you can, have you had any luck with anything like that? Because I think that's also something that's tricky too. It's like, where does this all go?
Yeah. That's something that always gets me sad, is like when we start throwing lots of things away, then I just think of the dumps and the pollution. And I think, yeah, there are so many different sites now where people just come and take things. Like people took broken fencing equipment from us, you know, when our daughter was done with fencing. It's just, you know, there are ways to get people who want to use things. Mm-hmm. So there's like a whole marketplace now. That's the one great thing about social media, where people will just like barter or take things from you. Believe me, there's someone who is going to be handy and fix that broken lamp and wants it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they always say that one person's trash is another person's treasure. And I think that as long as we as tastemakers can influence people to understand that we can make something from nothing, we can continue to advance this narrative. On my Instagram, I think it was last week, I posted a picture of my little speakeasy in my New York apartment. And I found this seller. He was throwing out these 1970s atomic Sarnen chairs, and they just scoop your booty so nice and snug, and they have a clear amber back, and they came with these really nice worn creamy leather cushion. And
amazing.
I bought them so inexpensively. I mean, I negotiated the deal, don't get me wrong, I didn't bring him down, but I didn't even bother recovering them because, you know, after you wipe them down and disinfect, obviously, they're perfect. So he didn't want them. He thought they were garbage, but for me, they were perfection. It's just about being creative and putting maybe a little extra elbow grease into typing it up and doing some research.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, for sure. Those sound great.
So what are some other ways that, I mean, we've talked about antiques. Do you guys also think about like your business practices and you know, other approaches to, you know, shipping? I mean, we haven't even talked about that. And like, you know, especially in the pandemic, we've all been, I know you guys probably especially have been experiencing.
You know, but there's actually like, there's shipping companies that now have like electric vehicle, you know, that are using, and there's actually a whole, I found out about it because we were talking about doing a show with a truck that Carson would actually be driving that was an electric, like 18-wheeler. So it's kind of interesting to see like 18-wheelers now being designed to be electric. So that's going to really change, and I think also now, I'm sure the boating world is also now, I'm looking at a boat for myself that's electric. So that means sooner than later, that's going to start to affect, hopefully, that's where all of this is going, So I think that it is interesting to see, and that's why I do call it shades of green, because I think everyone's looking, the shippers are looking for ways to make it more economical from their perspective and also more environmentally economical, but it's all, I think it's exciting to see things, start at this little sort of concept and then, they explode pretty quickly.
Yeah, totally. We have had, please go ahead.
I think, and Dale, you were asking what other ways we could, go beyond. So one thing that our firm tries to do when we're starting with a renovation project with a client, perhaps that has a good sized home, and maybe they've been living in that home and have collected a lot of things as far as accessories, artwork. The first thing we try to do is shop from the home. So I know that designers and decorators, they want to get all new artwork, all new tchotchke, if you want to use that word, or objet, whatever, accessories. But we try to go, right, exactly. We try to go through the client's home and then inventory everything they already own: mirrors, artwork, accessories, lamps, things that are in the attic, things that have been stored away for 20 years, in the garage or whatever. And we try to see if there's anything there that we could naturally work into and weave into our design first. And often we find a lot of stuff. And it does cut down as far as our sales internally, obviously, as far as what we go out there and purchase for the client, but we are being sustainably, we're being responsible towards the environment by shopping the house first. The clients may be like, why do you want to reuse that piece of artwork? We hang it in a different room. We lacquer this table, but we make it work.
Yeah, we do that. We do the same thing. We do that all the time. And even when, when clients have fabrics that look great and still, that are in great shape, we figure out a place for that to make sense. So we're looking at it so that we're trying to, reusing rugs. We've taken curtains from one room and brought them into another room and just cut them a little bit or added a trim to them and just kind of worked with what was there. So it's I think that's, I think if your designer doesn't do that, that's bizarre. Unless you just have like a house full of junk. Then it's your designer's responsibility.
Then you need Facebook Marketplace.
We gotta sell this. We gotta sell this shit.
We have had a lot of questions come in, so I do want to have some time for these too, because there's some interesting ones in here. And the one in particular is for Corey, and it goes, I know your projects tend to reflect a more inventive and unexpected take on classic design. I'm curious to hear how you approach layering in the old with the new to invigorate a space without having to replace it all.
So in my new book, we have a whole chapter called Good Bones, and we were talking about the value of using antiques and vintage pieces that the client already owns. And to the point that I was making earlier about shopping the house first, that's really the starting point. We go there and see what the client has, and then try to work that into the new design. The next step is to look at antique stores, online stores like Cherish and First Dibs, and see what there is available that can give that project, again, that level of panache, that level of style that's just, not completely brand new, but has a vintage story to tell. After we've done an inventory and done our floor plan layouts, and we've seen what we can reuse from the client and what is vintage and what is, antique, at that point, that's when we say, okay, what do we need that is new? Right. And that's when we go to the design centers. That's when we pull the Krypton fabric or whatever the different sources might be and bring in the reproductions. So we basically work in reverse. And so that has changed our pricing strategy as far as how we charge for our time. So I think a lot of designers sometimes try to make all of their profit on commissions on new stuff. So you have to charge differently. Maybe you raise your hourly rate so that you can compensate for your profit margins if it means you're purchasing less product from using sustainable items in the house that's already owned. But it's a great way, I think, to cut down on waste. And it makes the client feel that you've somehow dignified and given a touch of respect to what they've previously put their investment into.
That's great.
And to add to that, a lot of times there are things, don't you think that there are things that I think clients sometimes have great pieces, whether it's a piece of art or a fabulous rug, or they have a great, antique or vintage sideboard that is just like, wow, that's a fabulous piece. You want to use it. Sometimes those things need work, and they need to be, refurbished a little bit or brought up to speed. So there are ways that those things still make sense. And I also think one of the things that's really great is that when clients have those pieces, it affords the designer, if you have a budget of X amount of dollars, it just gives you the ability to buy better pieces, better quality pieces, more thoughtful pieces than you would if you had to buy everything. You know what I mean? So it is nice to get some of those things that offset the budget so that the budget can be more effective with the new things that you bring in, which I think is really a great asset to the designer and also to the client.
Of course. And here's another one that I'm interested in for Young. Young, can you speak more to the recycling of cotton and performance textiles, specifically as it relates to home life with little ones? How do you help to preserve this beauty while balancing real life?
So I can very well speak to that because I had 3 very messy kids. I found yogurt packages under the sofa cushions. I mean, you name it, I've gone through it. I almost died when my son took his tricycle and rammed into this baguette cocktail table. Thankfully, it's over 100 years old, so guess what? It was fine. But that's the thing. I mean, Krypton, I can tell you, I even have my clients take samples home with them and then say, have your kids have fun, put soy sauce, ketchup, whatever they have at home, and just rub it in, and then have them wash it off with soap and water. And they have the most fun, and they're like, wow, this is great. Yeah. And then they sort of also understand, this is what they do to furniture. Yeah. So they sort of have a connection to the furniture. And so I think, that really is going to last very well. But also, don't be afraid to purchase really high quality linen. You would be surprised how well that washes out. Pen marks, food stains. I know the thinner, finer linens aren't going to do so well with stains. But the really heavy weight, you would be just surprised. Like, think about how all bedding used to be linen and how you would just wash it out. Really, like napkins.
Same with linen, linen.
Linen works really well.
Don't you think that, Young, don't you find that, like, when you're doing, this is what I find, and I'm sure you, Corey, you're probably the same thing. When you're doing, like, kitchen banquettes or kitchen dining chairs in a dining room, or having like Krypton fabrics, right, as a way to bring in a fabric that you want, because the client inevitably will say, like, oh, I love this, but I'm worried about staining. And you can say, well, good news, this is a Krypton, and it's, stain resistant, it's this, it's that, it's easy cleanable, it's like, and so I think it really does become a great tool for us as designers, that, like, if we are doing a restaurant or a hotel room or something like that, to be able to tap into really great looking fabrics that are also, that we can sell to the client, because they have this ability. Mm-hmm. It becomes a sales tool.
What about trends that you're seeing in fabrics specifically? I know, Corey, one of our conversations you had talked about, like, just wanting more pretty and especially sustainable fabrics. Do you feel like you're starting to see that, and are people responding to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of the companies now are recognizing that they have to give us tools as decorators to make that point. If we want to make this the mainstay approach for being, responsible in these different areas. So there's a lot more pattern, a lot more color, a lot more variation of textures. There's a lot more thought, because I think that, and Young mentioned this earlier, actually, Dale, I think you mentioned it as well in your opening comments. For a long time, people just associated these fabrics with hospital waiting rooms and these more commercial
you don't want to live
spaces.
with that.
Yeah. And so I think now people are recognizing, okay, you know what, we need to give these designers, way more tools to work with if we really want to make this sale a mainstay, purchasing procurement process. So I'm thrilled. I'm really happy to see them coming along so far with it.
That's good. Well, this is actually a good segue because Krypton sent us a couple of fabrics to review from their spring collection. And we determined that Young has the best light to kind of show them off a bit. So I'm really interested in this one. I have it too. It's called Cayuga. And what's cool about it,
Pretty.
42% recycled polyester.
Yep.
Awesome. And I love that persimmon colorway. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's really great about it is, first and foremost, it's beautiful. It's a fabulous fabric. I love the design. I love the scale. I love the color. You know what I mean? It's great looking.
How would you use it?
I mean, I would use that on a banquette. I would use that on dining chairs. I would use that. It's got a lot of body to it, so I would probably not use it for pillows.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real upholstery weight.
It's a good upholstery fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an upholstery weight. So, I mean, it would be great on the body of a sofa, and then you could do the cushion in like a fabulous velvet or a boucle, like a really fresh white boucle to kind of like, and I love working with things like that because that will last literally forever, and then you can play with it. So I love a headboard. It would be great for a headboard in a hotel project because of the durability of it. It's really cool.
But also the pattern too, that kind of great, like would look so good across a big
Cayuga, I think what is sort of maybe referencing sort of Native American sort of like, it has that kind of vibe to it, which is really cool. Yeah, the weaving of it. And
also,
just sort of,
what else do you have?
One thing I love, I have this lighter fabric. I don't have the name, but something that I love about Krypton is that it allows you to use these lighter colors. You don't have to worry about, it came with this.
That's the seat cushion.
Yeah, see, this can be a cushion. You just like spray it.
Yeah.
Rub it off, and you can use like white fabric, light grays. And I think that's what's so appealing is you can use these lighter fabrics, which traditionally you would never use with children or hospitality.
Or with animals. A lot of people have dogs and pets, and they just, you want to be able to feel like, you don't want to feel like you're walking on like pins and needles trying to figure out where they are, what's doing or not doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, it has such a good hand too.
It does. It feels really nice. Yeah,
it's really, really great. Well, I think we're just about out of time, actually. So thank you guys all so much for being here today. I mean, I know I said this, but I always learn so much from you. I mean, I can do all the research I need to produce a story and, look at samples in the D&D, but I'm not out there upholstering things. And, that's what you guys, that's what your expertise. So I always am so appreciative of hearing what you have to say about how this all connects to the real world, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, thank you. And we love what you do, by the way.
Oh,
you guys are doing it. You guys are killing it. It's really fabulous.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, you're telling the
doing a
story.
great job.
Yeah, I will say someone had asked earlier that the story that we had done was in the March issue of Veranda. So it was the one, we just had a new one come out, so it was the previous issue, but hopefully you can still find it. And if not, there's a couple stories on our website too about the topic that you should check out also. But so thanks everybody. Thanks to ADAC for having us. This was such a great opportunity, and to Krypton and Kravit, and to Tom, Young, and Corey. Thank you guys.
Thank you for having us.
It's always
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
All right, guys.
This was great.
Guys, all soon.